Welcome to the Butter Notes podcast with three guys who have no business listening to music, much less talking about it.
Yeah, grindcore and hardcore is. I kind of want to like deep dive into that stuff. I've been interested in.
The only grindcore I know is the classic shit like.
I don't know very much at all.
Napalm Death qualifies, right?
That's grindcore. That's the classic.
Yeah.
An early Carcass.
Anal cunt.
I like early Carcass.
Early Carcass is really good and gross.
Yeah. That's fucking disgusting.
Yeah. You gotta check it out, Anthony. It's disgusting.
Check it out. It's disgusting.
Did I tell the story about Kevin Whitby on the Death Metal
episode? On the podcast.
I didn't?
No.
Well, this probably is the episode for it. Maybe if we do a porno grind episode.
Do a gross grindcore episode, I'm in.
There was like a mass shooter.
Jacob, if you don't like death metal, you will not like grindcore.
Oh, I've listened to grindcore before, man. What do you mean?
What was the shooting? This is so fucked up. What was the shooting that happened where like the mass shooter? There was like a mass shooting in like 2019 or 2018. Like the kid who did it was a vocalist for a porno grind band.
A well-known one? I mean, well-known.
No, like a local one. But there was like this like media attention focused onto porno grind briefly. Like
I don't want people thinking I have mass shooting facts stored in my head. So even if I do it, I'm not going to tell you.
Do we have a porno grind panic? A revisitation of the Satanic Panic, but about porno grind? I
think there was an attempt to stir a panic about porno grind, and it obviously didn't work.
It doesn't work anymore.
Do 100,000 people in the world listen to porno grind?
The idea that porno grind has like an influence over our culture is patently absurd.
Oh my god.
We would probably be more fun if it did. It would probably be a better culture.
Fuck. It'd be like Metalocalypse, where the death metal band constitutes a ninth of the world's economy.
That would be like a Metalocalypse plot. This is probably going into joking territory I shouldn't go into. If like there was like a series of like mass murders committed by porno grind bands, that sounds like something from a Metalocalypse episode.
Roughly speaking. Well, perhaps that will make for an interesting segue into the nerdiest subgenre of music on the planet.
It's up there.
Which we're going to talk about tonight.
Nerdier than like chiptune music. You ever listen to that? That's probably nerdier.
No, I have not. What is that?
It's like video game. I don't really know what it is. I should have read it up. I'll have to cut that out.
Yeah.
But it has something to do with like video game. Yeah.
I would say 90s prog metal is about the nerdiest subgenre of music.
Anime soundtracks might be nerdier.
That might be right.
True.
Well, let me say before we get started on this, I remembered that we switched up an album because we were talking about doubling up, and for some reason I thought we were talking about doubling up on, I think, was it? I thought we were talking about Devin Townsend, and it ended up being Opeth. So I listened to Mindcrime first, and then I had to catch up on Metropolis Part 2.
So we picked 5 albums, and I actually think the 5 albums we picked are like an extremely good starter pack for 90s prog metal.
Yeah.
Can I like go into the rationale of why I think that?
Yeah, why not? Well, real quick, let's just list the 5 albums. So basically the idea here was we want to do a prog metal series, and we were trying to figure out the best way to break that down, and ultimately decided the best way to do it was to do 4 decades worth. So pick 5 records as a starter pack for each decade's worth of prog metal. So this is going to be the 90s prog metal episode, and we're going to talk about Still Life by Opeth, the Ocean Machine album from Devin Townsend, Parallels by Fate's Warning, Focus by Cynic, and Metropolis Part 2 by Dream Theater.
Yeah. And breaking it down into decades is like obviously totally arbitrary. So like, but like prog metal is such a huge genre, and it's been around for so long, you have to kind of like have some arbitrary buckets of where to cut it off.
We were trying to find a cutoff point, and it was tricky. Like at first we were talking about doing pre-2010, post-2010, then we talked about just doing like 90s, 2000s, 2010s with a proto prog metal episode, and ultimately we'd worked out to 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. And so this is the 90s episode. And Anthony, what's basically your argument for doing it the way we're doing it?
This is a really good 5 albums for a starter pack. First of all, like, a starter pack is not a top 5. Like, I don't think any of us would have these 5 albums as our top 5 prog metal albums from the 90s. Yep. I don't think any of us would.
No.
But this is a really great starter pack for it. Like, chronologically, starting with Parallels by Fate's Warning is like came out in 91, so like very much a transitional album from the Queensryche and earlier Fate's Warning style of progressive metal, which was really progressive heavy metal, like heavy metal with some progressive rock, flourish on it, which is the album that Parallels is. But Parallels is hinting towards the sound that like Dream Theater would start up with Images and Words. And then Images and Words would be a really good segue from Parallels, came out the year after. But we already talked about that, and I'll talk about why Metropolis might be a better choice later.
I think Metropolis is definitely the better choice as an entry-level prog metal album for as a Dream Theater pick.
Yeah, and we have the early 90s.
We're talking about we did that early 90s Dream Theater. Plus, we're talking about a starter pack. I mean, I would think the rationale there would be this is an entry point for if you want to get into prog metal.
Yeah, and Fate's Warning embodies Fate's Warning embodies the style of late 80s, early 90s melodic progressive heavy metal. Like them and Queensryche are that style of music. So really, we have that sound pretty much encapsulated talking about Fate's Warning. And then after that, chronologically, is Focus by Cynic, which is we're doing 2 albums on the extremer side of 90s prog metal, Opeth and Cynic, but very different. And Cynic was like taking technical I don't really think that Focus is a death metal album. We'll talk more about that. But it was like taking like the progressive technical death metal, the jazzy stuff that was getting started by Atheist and Chuck Schuldiner and Death and Pestilence and all that stuff, and like making it, in my opinion, like 100% progressive, whereas like Human by Death and the Pestilence, Testimony of the Ancients, is that what it's called? And the the classic Atheist albums, I wouldn't completely call progressive metal, whereas I would call Focus progressive metal. I think that they pushed it to the most progressive direction. And then after
I was just going to say we should talk about that a little bit here too. Like, what do we mean when we're saying progressive metal? I think we're talking about it more as a genre than metal that is progressive or leans progressive.
Or more than a genre, I mean, it could just be like a movement or something, like in music, like a I don't know, a timestamp. Like this is what was going on. So there's metal in the 80s, and all that stems from Black Sabbath, goes through Iron Maiden and others, and then ends up with Queensryche, Fate's Warning, and then Dream Theater a little bit later. And yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different, as we mentioned here, there's like, the tech extreme side of things, there's the post ambient side of things, and there's the more straightforward metal side of things. But it seemed like there was a lot more exploration and divisions into subgenres of metal in the 90s than there had been in preceding decades. So I kind of look at it in the sense that we're talking about as a movement rather than a genre, or it could just be like a unifying genre, a bunch of different subgenres or something. So that's one way to look at it.
It's huge. It's huge, and there's like endless debate.
It's tricky to draw the line, exactly. I mean, it really is tough to draw the line. Like the 3 of us were arguing about including Chaos Fear by Meshuggah on this list, and
in my opinion, if you're going to do a starter pack for a genre, all the albums need to like be inarguably of that genre, where you can definitely argue that Meshuggah is not really progressive metal genre wise, even though they're obviously a progressive band, like lowercase, uppercase progressive metal. It's very debatable if Meshuggah is that. There are good arguments for it.
I want to put the disclaimer in here. I at least get out in front of this that Meshuggah is progressive in another sense of just taking the like standard genre format and elaborating on it in a way that was different than their contemporaries or peers. Or I mean, that's not always necessary, I guess, but that is one way, I guess, to be progressive. So in that way, that's why I've always said progressive. I understand it as a sort of meta genre or something like that. So for people, if anyone ever listens to this and they're really upset that we just said Meshuggah's not progressive, like they're definitely progressive in a certain sense, but I guess we're just clarifying the sense in which we're talking about progressive metal. And honestly, I think it's partially pragmatic because we have space for 5 albums plus maybe a little more, and so we can't talk about everything. So yeah, to Mickey Ackerfeld's point, yeah, we need to we need to be clear about that, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I meant by lowercase p progressive as opposed to upper capital P.
Yeah, ultimately I think that's right, and I mean, obviously there's tons of stuff happening on the periphery of these 5 albums that we're saying are the starting point for 90s prog metal.
Yep.
Let's just I kind of already sort of laid out the progression of this list a little bit, but I can just talk about it as we get to the albums.
Sure.
So we can just talk about Parallels now, go through it chronologically.
Yeah, that works for me. I'm just going to start out here. I'm going to have the least to say about this album. Anthony, I think you should probably take the lead on this one, man.
I should take the lead on it?
Yeah, take the lead. They're
when's the first time you ever heard this album?
I don't remember ever specifically listening to it until sometime in the last few years. So quick explanation here. The way I structure my daily listens, I have a spreadsheet, just like a master spreadsheet that has a ton of shit on it, all listed by decade and then by year within each decade. So I went through 1991 probably like 2 years ago. So I would have listened to it then, and then I listened to it again last week and once again today.
Okay. I'm not I first listened to the Fates Warning discography when I was pretty, probably 16 or 17, getting obsessed with Dream Theater and wanting to listen to every band that was considered progressive metal. And I'm not I really like Fates Warning. I think they're a great band. They're not a favorite band of mine. I'm not a huge fan of Fates Warning. I've heard all the albums multiple times each, but I don't have an extremely good grasp on all the albums. Parallels would be the one I have the best grasp on and I've heard the most. Probably my favorite of the catalog. It's always been interesting to me that Fates Warning have been unambiguously described as progressive metal, because I think they're more of a heavy metal band. Melodic heavy metal is kind of how I'd describe it. And there are a lot of other bands that are described as progressive metal, more contemporary bands that I would place in the same category. Evergrey is one as well. I'm kind of confused why they're constantly called progressive metal. But melodic heavy metal is not a genre. But I think that's basically what's happening here. And I think Parallels is a phenomenal album. And it's based, I think Ray Adler's vocals are fantastic. There's great big choruses. It's almost like what you would expect from a general good solid 80s heavy metal album. You're getting great big choruses, strong melodies, really good vocal melodies, solid sort of kind of crisp, clean production. You're getting that. Jim Matheos isn't being all that technical on here. It was a pretty stark contrast to the predecessor of Parallels, which is Perfect Symmetry, which is very technical. And I would definitely call that's probably their most progressive, unambiguously progressive record, Perfect Symmetry, which came out in '89.
That's my favorite in the catalog.
It's a great one.
Of the ones I've listened to, I haven't completed the discographies, but if we had done just a Pioneers of Prog Metal instead of breaking down by decade, I would have suggested Perfect Symmetry for Fates Warning over Parallels. So, I mean, both are great albums, and I think to your point, it is. They're definitely progressive metal, squarely in the genres we've defined it. But I think I find that I enjoy it more if I expect less from it in that regard. So it's
absolutely.
Not as, you know what I mean? It's not as if I don't go into expecting the frill of some of the Dream Theater stuff, on images and words and stuff like that. Then I find that I can enjoy it and appreciate it for what it is, and in that way, it's a great album, I think.
And I mean, Jim Matheos, it's interesting. I find very little similarity whatsoever between Jim Matheos and someone like Petrucci. Jim Matheos is very riff. I sometimes wish Petrucci would be more the sort of guitar playing we hear on an album like Parallels, where just
you get some of that on Distance Over Time.
Yeah, and Dream Theater are moving in the right direction with their newer stuff. every riff on Fate's Warning is just a solid, or every riff on Parallels is just solid. Every song is just like really tightly written, just really good melodic heavy metal songs with great production, great performances, solid riffs. Like, and Ray Adler again, I think this is like just a phenomenal vocal performance from Ray Adler. Not hamming it up too much. Like, it's like subdued. It's not too much. I think it's sort of the way that Adler is performing on this is sort of like something of a marker of their transition into the 90s out of the 80s. And especially like, and also distinguishing himself a lot from John Arch, who was the first singer of Fate's Warning, and is just like unbelievably campy and yelpy. And you've heard Awaken the Guardian. Both of you have heard Awaken the Guardian, right? Those vocals are, I like them, but I could see why someone wouldn't. They're very yelpy, incredibly campy, like 80s metal vocals. Whereas what Adler's doing on this album is super tasteful, but he's still hitting the notes, and like it's like being a virtuoso. Yeah, I think it's an amazing vocal performance from Adler on this thing.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to distinguish it. I hadn't thought about it in that context. He is very. It's not exactly straight ahead, but there's a richness to his voice. Obviously, his range is all over the place, but he's not taking it over the top. It's very composed.
Exactly. Way more so than like Labrie would do on Images and Words. Everything on this album is like, it's very tastefully done, and there's like a sense of proportion. There's a sense of compactness. While it's still being complicated, and like some noodly, naughty riffs are still happening. But at no point on this thing do they sacrifice just like writing a really solid song. And I really appreciate that, especially for progressive metal, which has a reputation of being the opposite of that.
Yeah. It's not super try-hardy, which I appreciate about it. They got a rein on it and made it exactly what they're trying to do. Like you said, I think it's really compact. And to me, I don't mean it. I hope this isn't taken as like a backhanded insult or something like that. But there's really no point during when I was listening to this that I think that there something that would detract from the album. Like there was no point in the album where I thought like, oh, I really don't enjoy this part or something. So there were no dips or anything like that. It was just pretty steady, and then there were some really good highs as well. So I can't knock anything about the album. So I think that's something positive about it. That's something more to be said than a lot of albums.
Yeah, there are some choruses. Yeah, it is the chorus. I'm sorry, James. I've been talking.
No, I was just going to say I agree. I think it's very consistent the whole way through.
And there are some really amazing choruses. Like the chorus on Eye to Eye is a beautiful heavy metal chorus. Same on Life in Stillwater. The Point of View. Just really good heavy metal vocal, like choruses and vocal melodies. I'm repeating myself, but like the tone I think is also very 90s as opposed to 80s, because like generally pretty bleak, pretty grim. The emotions that are coming through in the lyrics are like all not positive, and like whereas early Fate's Warning is all fantasy lyrics. It's like Dungeons and Dragons lyrics. And then Queensryche on Empire got kind of grungy and like sort of emotional, and so did Fate's Warning on Parallels.
Yeah, I think the production sort of follows that same line, although I think it's still got the afterglow of the 80s, let's say. Especially in the guitar tone, in the sound of the drums, especially the snare. I mean, so the guitar tone, and this is one thing I like about Matthias' playing in particular, is the clean tone. It's very chimey. It's this just bright, sparkly, open these big open string chords that he's plucking out each note on, and it's like a classic 80s kind of clean guitar sound. I love that sound, and he does a great job with it. The clean
that
parts
echoey
are really,
snare.
Yep, and the clean guitar parts are really nice. They're pleasant. They're easy on the ears, while still being interesting.
I also want to give a shout to Mark Zonder, the drummer. He's an absolute beast on the kit on this album. Like his drumming is phenomenal.
The performances are all great. They're all like very musically accomplished performances without being very flashy. And a lot of people, at least I did, and I'm sure a lot of people, like, kind of come to Fate's Warning because they get into Dream Theater. And I think, like, you're bound to be disappointed, even though these bands are talked about in the same sentence so much. They're very different bands.
They really are. And if you hold Fate's Warning to that standard, I could see why somebody might be, I don't know, at least underwhelmed. Because it's so much more subdued compared to Images and Words.
It's not sufficiently weird enough. That's really honestly what it comes down to. Dream Theater does some weird stuff.
I think there's no instrumental section from Metropolis Part 1.
Not even close.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think to a lot of casual like metal fans, if there's such a thing, I mean, they come into Fate's Warning and they might think that it's very complicated to compare to what they're listening to, and that might be a reference point for their listening to Dream Theater and thinking it's just completely in excess or something like that. Maybe that's what. I mean, we're coming from Dream Theater and appreciating and loving the band, and then coming back to Fate's Warning. Someone coming from just being an old head like Iron Maiden fan and listening to Fate's Warning, they're thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is out there," you know?
Yeah, or they think it's boring.
Yeah. I mean, I think Fate's Warning is more in that vein. I'd say the same thing about Queensryche. I mean, this is probably a conversation better reserved for the 80s episode, but that stuff is coming out of bands like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and sort of just adding a little flair, playing with the ambient sections a little bit more, and I don't know.
Yeah, it's of that lineage more so than Dream Theater is.
But yeah, it's a solid record. I enjoyed listening to it twice. I have no complaints about it. I think for what it was at the time, it was really good. And like I said, if I go into it without expecting it to be Dream Theater, then I have a great time listening to it.
Did you know that Jim Mathios was the original choice to be the guitarist for Transatlantic?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I know there was talk of him playing on Liquid Tension Experiment.
He was what?
It would have been.
There was talk of him being Liquid Tension Experiment's guitarist.
Oh, just him and Portnoy doing it. Yeah, him and Portnoy. There was two times in the late '90s that they wanted to collab. They didn't end up collabing. Have the two of them have a collaboration on record anywhere? They have to. Although I can't think of what it would be.
Let's see.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, one of you guys should look that up. I also know.
Yeah, they're OSI, right?
OSI with Kevin Moore. I never heard those albums.
Yep.
Neither of us.
I somehow have never heard those albums.
Me.
Have you?
Yeah, what's that song?
Now I gotta change that.
I'd heard the song Blood, or is it the album Blood? It would always come up after I played Dream Theater, and then if my streaming service would just roll over to the radio, right, and it would just play a song, and OSI always comes on if I'm listening to them, Transatlantic or whatever. So then I listened to, I think the album's called Blood. But yeah, that's the collab they did.
Yeah, I feel like an idiot for not having remembered that. But I haven't heard those albums before.
They're pretty decent. I would check them out. I like them.
Did you guys know Dimebag Darrell was the original choice for Liquid Tension Experiment?
Oh, really?
Can you fucking?
Do you know Eddie Van Halen was the original choice for Liquid Tension Experiment?
It actually was Dimebag, though.
No way.
I'm not fucking with you. Yeah.
I could see Portnoy wanting to do that.
I could see Portnoy wanting that too. I mean,
he wanted it to be like an instrumental jam band with Dimebag.
Yeah, it would have been a very different band with Dimebag instead of Petrucci.
Yeah.
Insanely, and Transatlantic would have been ridiculously different with Jim Mathios instead of Ruina. Jim Mathios and Neil Morris are very different.
Yeah, Ruina has so much character on the Transatlantic stuff. I can't imagine it with a different guitar player.
And a metal-leaning guitar player would have made it so different. I would like to have heard that album in some alternate history.
Yeah.
I can't really think of Neil Morse singing over Fate's Warning style riffs. Although it would probably be pretty good. Yeah.
Real quick tangent. I was just thinking about this. We were talking about speaking of Kevin Moore, like fronted projects, have you guys listened to Chroma Key, like Dead Air for Radios?
Never heard those either. I'm sure they're great.
Okay.
No,
Cool. I'm gonna put that as my album when we do our next episode. That's the one.
You already picked one.
You should. We got till Friday. We can switch it up.
No. Okay. We'll table this for now. We'll put
You're spoiling the fucking episode, man.
Yeah.
We'll cut it out.
For all of our devoted fans. It's not a surprise anymore.
Oh no.
All right, so we're gonna talk about Cynic next.
Yeah, let's talk about Cynic.
Yes.
I know this is an album Jake holds in extremely high regard, so why don't you take the floor on it?
Yeah, I got into Cynic in an interesting way. I didn't. I think maybe the first time I listened to him, I was like, this is just really weird. I couldn't dig the vocoder. It filtered me out almost immediately.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I listened to the Contortionist that I came to appreciate, because the Cynic influence in the Contortionist is like 1-to-1, and it's like once Cynic moves away from the more tech extreme kind of stuff into the more weird psychedelic rock stuff that they've done, like Carbon Traced Air and what's the one that most recently came out in like 2014, has the lines wrong.
Kindly Bent to Free Us.
Kindly Bent to Free Us, yeah, exactly.
You combine the two other ones, Traced in Air and then Carbon Based Anatomy. What's the EP?
Carbon Based Anatomy, thank you.
Yeah, and then you said Carbon Traced in Air.
Carbon Traced.
Yeah,
in Air,
you combined the two
for...
titles.
Easy on the legal tobacco, buddy.
Yeah.
Slip of the tongue. But no, yeah. So I think the progression of like from the Contortionist is like when they did that deathcore stuff, and then they did the one album where it was kind of more experimental, avant-garde type, like psychedelic metal, I guess, and then moving into like language and stuff. So then I went back and I was like, I have to check out the Cynic's discography, and yeah, man, if I had to rank the top 5 progressive metal albums of all time, I think Focus would probably end up in the top 2 or 3 for me. And it's got, I think something I really appreciate about it is it has, I don't know, it manages to combine a ton of different genres in a really interesting way. A lot of the compositions are very bass forward, with like Sean Malone doing these really weird like twills and stuff. It's like really jazzy for a progressive metal,
insanely
album
jazzy
as well. Yeah,
all those clean guitar parts.
All the clean guitar parts. But then they do really weird kind of psychedelic stuff as well. So yeah, it's just a really cool fusion of stuff. So yeah, I definitely hold this album in really high regard.
I do too, and
yeah, this is really solid. I mean, like, I think this album would be most interesting for people who are already hooked on sort of more modern prog metal. Bands like
it's so prophetic of bands like that.
Yeah,
it came out so much longer than that scene,
fucking A.
long before that scene started, and it was like
I mean,
it
predicted 20 years ahead of their time.
T.
This came out in 93.
Yeah,
insane. 93.
Insane. Definitely agree there. What's your history with this album, James? When did you first hear this?
I remember listening to Cynic back in high school. Probably before I was into the prog thing, probably more like when I was getting into death metal, back in like 9th or 10th grade.
I think you're inevitably, and like the arc where, like, a lot of people have this arc with Focus by Cynic where they really don't like it at first and then go back and it becomes like an absolute all-time favorite. Like, I've heard that arc before when people talk about this album.
I wonder if it's the vocoder, like Jacob said. Because that is sort of off-putting the first time you hear it, like on Veil of Maya in particular.
The vocoder is part of
it. They front load the goddamn vocoder, man.
Yeah, they do. Well, then the juxtaposition with the screams as well. It's just like a weird kind of black and white juxtaposition, I think. But when I go back and listen to it, and that kind of like jazzy element comes out, it works really well, and you wouldn't think it would work well.
I agree.
I also don't think that this is a death metal album at all. Like, I don't really think it is at all. The ghost of it is there.
It's a fusion. Yeah, it's a fusion. It's interesting too because like his screams, he sounds like that dude from Obituary. There's this like almost high pitched aspect to the guttural vocal. It's
Yeah.
very unique.
The guttural vocals on Focus to me are not very brutal or harsh at all. Like, I think you could like put this on for like maybe like a more normie metal fan, and oddly enough, the harsh vocals are going to be the thing that like are going to be on the bottom of the list of things that like would turn off maybe like a normie metal fan to this.
Sure.
It's the vocoder. It's the vocoder.
The vocoder and the fact that the riffs and the songwriting really don't have that much to do with death metal or like heavy metal
that's
at
a
all.
good point. Yeah, I mean it's almost like a jazz fusion album.
It really is. It really is.
With death metal vocals at certain points.
Well, have you listened to Sean Malone's project, The Gordian Knot or Gordian Knot? He has a couple albums. That's super fusiony. It's not even really metal. But yeah, that's really for it's so weird that because they came out of that tech death scene in Florida and then managed to weave something fusiony like this. I've never looked into what their other influences might have been or what their musical histories were or anything like that, but it was such a weird album. It almost came about in a vacuum, kind of. It seems like to me anyway, based on what I know of the history of the band.
I hear that. I mean, I'm looking at my list here in '93, and there's not much else going on that's like Focused by Cynic. There's really, there aren't any other bands that are doing that sort of jazz fusion metal music.
Yeah, the band that came the closest was Atheist, especially with Elements.
Right.
But like even an album like Elements, it's Elements by Atheist is very jazzy, but I don't think to the degree that Focus is. But that would be the closest, I would say, would be Elements by Atheist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, then they of course they've had a couple of breaks in their history. I think they gone long periods without writing albums and stuff like that.
They were a one album wonder after Focus until 2008 when Trace Dinner came out.
Yeah, so and it was a wildly different style too. And I love Trace Dinner. I got it right that time. I love Trace Dinner and that sort of more mellow psychedelic stuff. I mean of course Focus did too, but I mean that those albums I think the Contortionist owes a lot to, and so any band that the Contortionist is in debt to, I feel like I owe a lot of appreciation for as well. And I mean I definitely understand their appreciation for it.
Yeah, I mean I really see that in all of the more modern prog metal bands. I see it in Periphery. I see it in Tesseract.
Yeah,
all the big atmospheric 2010s prog metal bands.
Cynic just like don't have the vibe of a metal band. Like the mood that the music gives you is not the vibe and the mood that I get from like a death metal album, even a progressive death metal album.
Yeah.
Like if I listen to like Symbolic, I am not getting, which is like an album that is of equal complexity musically. I'm not getting the same mood out of Symbolic by Death than I am from Focus by Cynic. I'm getting a metal vibe from Symbolic by Death, but I really don't get that vibe at all from Cynic, even on Focus.
There's a spacey sort of psychedelic element to it, I think, that's distinguishes it.
I think if I'm recalling an interview I think I read with Paul Masvidal, the frontman, vocalist, and guitarist for the band, where he mentioned that even in the 90s that they were associated with the stuff going on in Florida at the time, that they were always seen as kind of like outsiders, that they didn't they weren't wearing the right clothes to shows and things like that, and people would look at them as kind of weird, like why are you at a death metal show or like associated with these bands or something like that. But yeah, so these dudes definitely beat to their own drum, man. Like I can't find anything that would have led them to write an album like this. I think Anthony's right that it's not a death metal album. The death metal influence is obvious on the album, I think.
Yeah, but that's not it's not the genre of the album, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yep.
But if you listen to, like I said, if you listen to Gordian Knot, like Sean Malone's solo project, yeah, there's definitely. I think they had to have had some jazzy background or something. That's my only guess as to how they ended up with this. And then the choice of the vocoder, man, that was just a completely experimental trick.
The vocoder,
like, it could have been super gimmicky, and then yeah, it worked.
The vocoder is a ballsy move.
It was ballsy. It gives it this like, I don't know. It sounds like a robot almost. You know, it sounds like a sort of cartoonish robot voice, but it works perfectly.
Somehow it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Computer vocals are not something you see very often in metal music. Like maybe like with like cyber grind music, but other than like something like that, and the vocoder, like the vocoder doesn't. They use it to such a like in a way on this album where it does not sound like a vocal filter or vocal effect. It doesn't really sound like a human vocal.
Yeah. Well, it almost gives the album a sci-fi feel, at least in certain parts. But it's so strange. Not that the music has to correspond to like the lyrical content, but the lyrical content, and I guess across all their albums, is like very like Eastern philosophy forward, like all about meditation,
right,
and doing mind-bending drugs and things like that.
Well, remember when we saw?
Yeah, I was just going to bring this up, Anthony. We saw Cynic in 2010, I think it was 2010. We saw them, and the vocalist had us do yoga in the audience. He had the audience do yoga together in sync.
That was Paul, yeah. And it was crazy to like be seeing that at like this sweaty small club like full of metalheads.
Yeah, Devin Townsend had just played a bunch of Ziltoid shit, and
this
guy gets up and tells us to start doing yoga.
And then between the Bear to Me, who was the main act that night, like people absolutely destroyed the place.
Oh God, yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah, sonar.
It was a very strange vibe shift, which I think kind of embodies why I don't really feel like Cynic is metal, because the second they got on a stage when they were like on the ticket for like a 4-band metal concert, like the vibe instantaneously changed.
Yeah, they don't appeal to the average metalhead. I think that's right. There's the energy is so much more subdued. It's so much more atmospheric.
Yeah, which is the direction the genre really took a lot in the 2010s. So.
Yep, exactly.
Huge influence on the genre. Hugely important album. Focus is.
Any tracks on here that particularly stand out to you all? Or I think Sentiment is one of the best songs, I think, from the 90s.
Yeah, and
for me anyway.
What's it called?
Sentiment starts with that like tribal like drum whatever. It has that like kind of ambient break in the middle. And then I'm But a Wave Too. If you listen to that and then think about if you think about the contortionist there, you're like, oh yeah, they parodied that for sure.
The Eagle Nature has like I knew it was the Eagle something. I just took me forever to remember the title. The Eagle Nature has like a legitimately good vocal hook from the vocoder, which is kind of impressive. I don't know if you all remember it.
I don't remember the specific moment. I listened to this twice in the last 2 weeks. Yeah, I mean, honestly, what sticks out to me the most is the first track, Veil of Maya. Because, like I said, they're so forward with the vocoder. It's totally unapologetic. They just shove it in your face on the first.
And then when it cuts to
first second,
like they jump right in too. I mean, there's no big intro.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that kind of like muted intro, and then it jumps right into the vocoder.
My only complaint about this album is that it's too short.
It's very short.
It's
I think it's kind of the right length for this music.
Yeah, that's probably right. If there were more of it, I might not appreciate it as much. It leaves me wanting more, which is like I guess that's the appeal of it.
Yeah, the Traced in Error is really short too. It's like the same length. Kindly Bent to Free Us is their longest one, and even that wasn't a particularly long record.
Yeah, that's a cool album. I really like that album.
There's something nice about that kind of conciseness in a prog metal band, because it's usually it can be almost frivolous sometimes.
Yeah, and another reason why I think
Flower Kings album.
the opposite.
I love the Flower. I love the Flower Kings. I absolutely love the Flower Kings. It's just you gotta strap in when you're trying to listen to one of their records.
Yeah.
Another reason why I like this list, even though we are talking about a Dream Theater album on this list, but I think like the other albums on this list are a lot of people associate the progressive metal genre like exclusively with Dream Theater, and I think these first two albums, these first two albums we talked about show a lot more restraint than a band like Dream Theater does, and they're foundational albums for the progressive metal genre. So progressive metal is just like way wider than Dream Theater, which I think this list illustrates.
Well, and the next record demonstrates the exact same thing. Let's talk about Ocean Machine here. Is this the first Heavy Devi album?
Well,
Punky Brewster.
It's the first after Punky Brewster, I think, right?
Yeah, and you know that it was released under the name Ocean Machine originally.
Yes, so it was supposed to be the
Biomech.
Band Ocean Machine. And the album would.
And the album's Biomech. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. The recording story for this album is crazy if it's true. Devin went to like Spain or something.
Yeah,
and,
I read about this.
Yeah. The guy who ran the studio was just having like crazy parties and stuff, and they couldn't get all the recording done. They were having problems recording the drums or something, and then he like snuck in at night to try to steal the master tape and got caught or something, and then the guy was holding the master tape hostage, or I think I got it backwards. He was holding the master tape hostage because Devin wasn't going to pay him or something. He's like, it was just terrible, it was unprofessional and whatever, so the guy was holding it hostage, that he got it, and he like, the title track Ocean Machine was supposed to be on the album, he like left that there or something. So there's only a demo of it or something. If that's all true, that's like the craziest recording story I've ever heard, maybe, but I honestly don't know with him. He could be embellishing. I don't know.
That would be crazy.
Stories like that have a way of being true, man.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, they were young. They were young as shit when this album came out. I mean,
I can't remember why he wanted to go to Spain to record this. There was something weird about that too, but I can't remember.
With Devin, it's pretty much guaranteed to be weird.
Yeah.
But for a Devin Townsend record, this is pretty subdued. Like, it's not very weird.
This album is so weird. Yeah. Are you kidding me? This is such an odd album. It's not like an avant-garde album.
But
this album is so odd.
That's what I mean.
It's not goofy, but this album is very odd.
Like, there's no samples of kitties meowing in the background.
Right. That's what I mean. Yeah.
It's a weird record. Like, he's not going like completely like nuts, but there are like some odd choices on this album. Like, there's that like choral outro on that song in the middle of the album. I think it's on
Is it Voices?
It's the outro of Voices in the Fan with like the choral section is what's going on there. The whole the Death of Music is like a highlight of the album, but also like the entire track is very strange. With that, like,
it's
I don't know how to pin it down.
It's
like, it's kind of electronic, but not really. It's
so I thought about this song in particular today. Death of Music almost has like a pop element to it. He's doing these very sort of fanciful pop vocal melodies that are really pleasant and pretty easy on the ears. But obviously, there's the ambient element to it. It's out of place.
Really drone. It's like it just kind of hangs. It's like an ether or a cloud that just
it's
kind
ambient.
Of hangs out.
Yeah.
And I mean, Devin Townsend really loves ambient music and has made a lot of it. So this is kind of his first real.
Yeah, Dev Labs.
Yeah, I mean, Funeral into Bastard into Death of Music into Things Beyond Things is one of my favorite moments in the whole discography.
Yeah,
I would start with Regulator. Even I think that most of the music is like backloaded. Like, there's more music from that.
This album is insanely backloaded. I was gonna say, like,
I think
this album sags at points, in my opinion.
Yeah, the first half of the album's fine. I don't have any complaints with it really, but I noticed listening to it that I really had my attention drawn to it when we hit about Regulator.
Yeah.
Regulator on is vastly superior, and I actually just checked my iTunes. Regulator to the end of the record is 41 minutes long, so it's an entire album worth of material there.
yeah.
Yeah.
I do think a lot of the shorter songs in the first half of the album are kind of forgettable. Like they never stick with me.
The intro's a good. The intro's a great start. What's the name of that song? Seventh Wave. Yeah, Seventh Wave is great.
Excerpt.
Yeah. Yeah, it probably does drop off a little bit between Seventh Wave and Regulator. That's really where it picks up my attention anyway. Is right around Regulator.
Yeah, and like I respect some of the things he's trying to do. Like I mentioned, Voices in the Fan. I don't really think that track works, but I do. I like that he took the risk of it. It definitely like
and I mean
he's laying
like
the foundation
this
for
is
his
a young band.
Yeah. And especially since Devin Townsend had, with the exception of Punky Brewster, had made like exclusively like very, very like pretty intense extreme metal music.
Well,
this is
kind of. You guys know where he got started, right?
Steve Vai.
Steve Vai's band as the vocalist.
Sex and Religion or Drugs and what's that album
Sex and
called?
Religion.
Sex and Religion. Yeah.
There's some great old videos of him.
I forgot about that. Yeah. Did he have any part in the writing process though?
I don't know. I would expect that was probably mostly Big Steve.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, and I mean it's funny.
I've never heard
videos because
I forgot about this. I've never heard this. Oh, and Bozio on drums.
Yeah, it's such it's a cool album. It's really different from Passion and Warfare, which is the album I think most people think of when they think of Steve Vai, the one that's got For the Love of God on it.
Yeah.
Sex and Religion is more of a band album. You've got this crazy young dude, Devin Townsend, just going wild on the vocals. And you can see elements of what he's going to do with his own music down the road. It's really fun watching those old videos.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
There's a great one of they're on one of the late night shows, and they play "Still My Bleeding Heart" is the song, and Devin Townsend's just killing it. He's great.
Yeah, some amazing vocals from Devin Townsend, especially like on the outro of Death of Music, like.
Oh, and Bastard.
Yeah, and Bastard. Bastard is a masterpiece.
Fuck, I love that song. That's a fucking great song. That's classic Devin Townsend. It's one
of his best songs of his whole catalog.
Yeah.
Big wall of sound, big deep vocals,
big
powerful,
heavy wall of sound, just like Deadhead.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like
Deadhead.
Just
kind of like it's like a wave and it just kind of takes you.
Yep.
And it's like slow moving kind of and oscillating. It's nice. It's really nice.
He really, I mean, the kind of ambience that he's able to create with his music is just incredible. It's such an experience to listen to it.
Biomech, the song structures are also, I really realized this re-listening to it today, even though I've always been a fan of this record. The song structures are very, very repetitive, and like not in a bad way.
Yeah.
And again, in a way that you wouldn't typically associate with progressive metal, which is why I think this is like a good epitome of like 90s sort of experimental post like metal music, while like being an entirely progressive metal album unambiguously. Like it's those long like repetitive, like building texture over a long track. Like that's the definition of Bastard and Death of Music. Like Bastard is one riff. It's one riff basically the entire song. But it never gets old.
Yeah, and we see that all through Devin's music, especially on the heavier stuff. Like I think of Accelerated Evolution or
Alien
Zoltoid.
by Strapping Young Lad.
Yeah, exactly. Alien by Strapping. I mean, all of that stuff is just big and heavy and repetitive in exactly the right way.
In exactly the right way.
Yeah.
The post-rock influence is I definitely get some post-rock, post-metal from Biomech.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Yeah.
Especially with the
that's
drumming. Who played drums on this?
That's in the.
I forget who played drums on this.
I don't know. It's not Gene Hoglan. I know that.
If I remember, this was like, this might have been the one where it was like really weird, the drumming situation or something. They had like
or it's like 10 drummers or something. Marty Chapman played drums. I don't know who Marty Chapman is.
Me either.
But there's some cool post-rocky drumming from Marty Chapman on this album.
There is.
And
Well done, Dr.
the
Chapman.
So apparently the sample for the snare drum of the album is taken straight from the beginning of "Sad But True" by Metallica.
Yes, that's right.
I'm just taking that from Wikipedia. I knew there was something weird with the drums.
Never thought you'd
album.
hear that someone sampled the Lars Ulrich snare drum sound. At least Saint Anger couldn't have done it. At least they couldn't have taken the Saint Anger snare yet.
Oh yeah.
The Saint Anger snare defies
snare
belief.
sounds.
The Saint Anger snare is barely a snare. It's
The
more like a tom.
the human
It's a trash can lid, like a metal trash can lid.
God,
language is not capable
fucking
of
idea.
truly describing the snare on Saint Anger.
That was the dumbest fucking idea.
Oh man.
So Saint
Yeah,
Anger
I
is
mean-
our next essential progressive metal album of the 90s.
Yep, it's the
That was
pleb
a good
filter for
segue.
all you prog metal fans out there. Saint Anger, it's the true pleb filter.
Yep.
Could it not be argued that Saint Anger is a full-blown progressive metal album?
Well, it's more like, is it right to call any other albums prog metal when we know that we have Saint Anger? Does anything else measure up?
Is it ethical
No.
to even use the word progressive in the context of music when we have Saint Anger?
No. All right,
It's
so we gotta
unethical.
scrap this fucking episode. We're done.
We can't have this on our conscience.
Nope.
Metallica. I can't believe Metallica finished music. That's wild.
Oh, with the
What'd you say?
Napster lawsuit?
No, I just mean with Saint Anger, they
Oh.
finished music.
Oh, yeah.
That's the capstone. It's the end of music.
Like, why did anyone make any music afterwards?
Yeah.
All attempts thereafter were just trying to get at
Footnotes
this
at
thing
best.
that they created with Saint Anger.
An ineffability.
They recaptured some of it on Lulu and Death Magnetic, I think.
Lulu, like, I actually kind of like
They
Lulu.
failed to. All right, I'm out.
Hot take here from Tone.
No, okay. What else are we going to say about
Yeah.
Biomech?
We'll move on
Yeah.
from that.
Stop kicking the fucking dead horse of Saint Anger jokes.
Yeah,
Well, all in all,
that
man.
was some normie bullshit. Just ragging on Saint Anger. That's like loud
seriously.
wire bullshit.
Yeah,
It's in all of us, don't worry.
maybe we're the plebs.
Maybe the real
Yeah,
Saint
right
Anger
after all.
Sure.
were the friends we made along the way. All right, we're gonna talk about Opeth now.
I hope so.
I just wanted to say nothing to stretch that out, make it as uncomfortable as possible.
Are we talking about Opeth or Metropolis Part 2? They both
Opeth
came out in
first.
October 99.
Wait,
Yeah,
what?
Yeah.
Say that again?
I said they both came out in October 99. God, that was a disproportionate reaction.
It came out in 99? I
What's
thought
that?
for sure it came out in
Yeah,
98.
man.
October 18th. We're gonna do this on the technicality, I think.
Okay.
When was
I think Still Life is
For
first.
some reason, I was like positive that Still Life
It
came out in
is.
98. Hence,
I thought
I was
that
like
too for some
extremely
reason.
sure
I
of
don't
it.
know why.
Hence the disproportionate
No.
reaction.
You know what?
'Cause
Yeah,
I was, like,
gonna,
so
I was
sure
gonna
of it.
say this is part of the reason why I thought we should do Ghost Reveries instead of Blackwater for the next one, because Still Life is so close.
It is very close.
to Blackwater. I mean, that's not a reason against it necessarily. That was just a thought I had.
All right, so I want to preface this conversation by saying that Still Life is fucking incredible. I have to throw that out there. It's fucking incredible.
Oh God!
I think
Here
you
we
guys
go.
like it more. I
Go-
think you guys like it
Here we
more than
go.
I do.
Say your dumbass spiel about Steve Wilson. Just get it out, and then
Yeah,
we can
you-
talk about the
you
album.
take the.
It's not a
You take the
dumbass.
lead on
It's
this
not a
one.
dumbass spiel. I think they.
Oh,
they
listen
mature
to
in
this
a
guy.
huge- they mature
All right, I'll
in a
be quiet.
huge way
What
on
you saying?
Blackwater Park. They mature in a huge way on Blackwater Park, and from there, going forward, Still Life is like a perfect bridge from early Peth into middle Peth.
I think the maturation process starts with Still Life. I think you're right. They mature in a huge way on Blackwater Park.
I don't.
Like,
I'm not calling Still Life immature either. By the way, I like I said, Still Life's fucking.
No, yeah.
The
I-
compositions are the composition is incredible on Still Life. But the production is just not as good. It might be a money thing. I don't know. I mean, it's also sort of self-produced.
I think the sound is intentional. I think they're still doing like the kind of 90s Gothenburg scene, mellow death sound.
Right.
I think that's still what they wanted to do. They definitely changed the way that they wanted their albums to sound starting with Blackwater Park, but I don't think it was I don't think we're dealing with like just low rent on a budget production on Still Life.
No. I don't think so either. And I'm not, the production isn't bad on Still Life. It's just different. And I mean, I love Steven Wilson's production style, so the stuff he does with them is definitely my favorite. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to rag on fucking Still Life here. I think I put it like one tier below you guys, and the screeching ensued.
Your opinion, every opinion you just said is very valid, and I love you. I was just kidding around.
What was the?
I'd give you a nice. I think you said. I'd give you a nice platonic kiss on the cheek if I was in there with you right now.
Anthony, I think your exact words were, "Wow, look at all those wrong sentences you just typed." I was like, "That's the most brutal way to say that." I love it.
Yeah, I think that's an exact quote.
Yeah,
I think that's an exact quote.
That tracks.
So,
yeah, I mean, look, we're starting this conversation off in a weird way because I'm getting backed into a corner here on.
No. I just want to.
The hyenas are circling your corpus.
Getting fucking circled here, boys.
No, I'm just curious. Is the production? So, I mean, you made the claim that Anthony and I like it more than you, and I think that's probably true. But is it the production that's holding you back from liking it as much as us? Would you say?
I think that's the biggest part of it. Like I said, I mean, the composition is amazing. The production is just not quite there. I mean, this is the first Opeth album where they really dive in heavy into the varied composition style that they're famous for, where they're blending all these different types of music, and that's a really hard thing to make sound really good. So it's not surprising that it's imperfect on Still Life, and I do think the production is imperfect. There are moments where it's just mixed a bit weirdly.
Example?
I'm trying to think of an example right now. Like Mike's vocal sounds somewhat off at certain parts. Not that the performance was off, just that it's mixed and it's just mixed in the wrong place. Like the acoustic guitar is sort of overbearing on certain parts. There's a particular line I'm thinking of where it's very high in the mix in kind of a weird way. And the guitar tone, I noticed, the guitar tone, this is going to sound crazy, but it's not as heavy as you get on something like Blackwater Park. It's louder than it is like chuggy.
Well, that's the Steven Wilson influence there. Steven likes to turn down that in the mix, I think.
Yeah, so I don't know. It like I said, it's not bad. It's not badly produced. It's just differently produced, and I think it's an obvious first attempt at this, at trying to make the new compositional style sound really good.
I think that the transit.
Or I'm completely talking out of my ass. I mean, this is all obviously on the table.
The More is the first track, obviously, and the intro of the More is very quiet. It might be like the longest moment of like pure ambience in the entire Opeth catalog.
Yeah.
And
there's that part on. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, and then I just want to say that like the shift, and it's not really like a build. It's pretty much a cut. I think that the cut into the heavy riff after the intro of the More, I think that the dynamic range is like sounds amazing. Like, I don't think it's flat at all. Like you're immediately hearing louder music. In a very stark way.
I don't have any issue with the dynamic range. That's one of my favorite things about Opeth in general is the dynamic range.
They might be Michael's most complex songs.
I definitely think so. There's so much intricacy to it compared to a more. I mean, like I'm thinking about comparing it to something like Blackwater Park.
Yeah, like Leper Affinity.
A lot more subdued.
Yeah, like on Leper Affinity on Blackwater Park, like that like really catchy riff comes in like I think it's about 4 minutes in, and like they just kind of build off of that riff for a long time. Whereas like things are like constantly changing on Still Life. There are like very few moments where you're just like riding a riff. Like, and it's the same like early Opeth, like Morning Rise is the same way. It was like constantly shifting song structures, like the opposite of a Devin Townsend album, ironically. Like Michael's writing style on these early Opeth albums. But it's so organic and everything flows together absolutely flawlessly, which is like Michael Ackerfeld's arguably strongest trait as a songwriter and composer is transitions.
Yep. Oh, I completely agree. That's the best thing about Opeth's music is seamless transitions.
Yeah, like that transition from the beginning of the more to the heavy riff, like a lesser composer than Michael Ackerfeld would have bungled that tremendously. We've all heard examples on albums, on lesser albums, but it works so well.
But I also think that this album, at least when I was listening to it, I thought it was also really easy to kind of like decompose the sort of genre influences that go into Opeth's music from this point on. I was gonna lead. Maybe this will take us another tangent, but I was gonna maybe a somewhat hot take. I don't know if you guys would recoil at this at all, but I mean, there's obviously the black metal sort of death metal influence on it. I mean, that's clear. Then the folksy stuff, like I was thinking on Godhead's Lament. I mean, there's that part where it's to me it's like, oh, I'm listening to Jethro Tull, and then the brutality of the guitars and the growls come in.
Oh, amazing acoustic guitar also, on Godhead's Lament on the quieter section.
Yeah, it's incredible.
The album.
But I think there's also very apparent rock blues influence on this album as well, and I think that's been brewing in Opeth for a while. So I guess we lose the brutality of it when we get into like Heritage and stuff, but I don't know why people were so surprised that they took that route. I mean, that has been
since
been
Orchid, I would argue,
in Opeth's music.
I totally agree.
Sure.
I don't think that's a hot take. That's a hot take for very bullheaded metal purists. Yeah.
Well, see, that's why I think it might be a hot take. I was figuring you guys might be fine with the claim. I think there are people out there who when Opeth moved to the Heritage era stuff, they were kind of, I don't know, it slapped them across the face and they weren't expecting it or something. I mean, a lot of it's superficial. It's like, oh, no more growling or something like that.
Very superficial.
But if you listen, if you listen to Still Life, I think it's really easy to kind of distill and decompose the sort of genre influences that led Opeth into this kind of compositional style and stuff like that. And that's one reason I really, really appreciate it, because it's all very clear where it's coming from, and then he manages to synthesize it in a really interesting way. So that's why I rank Still Life incredibly high, because it was such a cool album coming out of the more brutal death metal stuff that he was doing prior to this.
But we have Serenity Painted Death, which is, I'm not stating it as the best death metal Opeth song, but one could certainly argue that it is. It's definitely up there.
That's the section where he sings the line, or where he growls the line "Serenity Painted Death." Right along with the rhythm of the drums. It's so fucking awesome. It's so tight and so heavy.
Michael's vocals on Serenity Painted Death, his growls are disgusting. Like that, those are the harshest vocals in the Opeth catalog. Is his harsh vocals on Serenity Painted Death?
Song,
disgusting.
I totally agree. I mean, dude, I think Michael's got one of, if not the best, death growl in metal music.
Oh, absolutely.
It's crystal clear while still being really guttural and throaty and just heavy.
When you told me that his singing. That his singing technique is based on his growling technique. I think I or did I have it the other way around? The other day, I think we were talking about Opeth maybe in a previous episode with just you and I, and I had finished watching some record producer listen to. I don't watch too many reaction videos, but I thought that one was interesting. I wanted to see what this pop producer thought about Michael's vocals. It was on Harlequin, Reverie Harlequin Force, whatever.
Okay.
And this guy speculated that Michael's growls were his style. The growls were a symptom of his singing, and I think James, you mentioned it might have been the other way around. I don't know if you remember saying that.
I don't remember
the
conversation. I mean, growling is weird. It's like screaming with a very low pitch.
Yeah.
You know, they are screaming in terms of what they're doing with their voice. It's a scream. It's just pitched very low. I don't know a lot about this because it's really hard, and I know I'd just destroy my voice if I started trying to learn how to do this stuff.
I can't do it. Yeah.
But to do it properly involves screaming in the right way and then learning how to control the pitch of that screaming.
Yeah, it's insanely hard.
Yeah.
Like,
and Mike is just as good as it gets.
He does it flawlessly. Yeah. It's wild. I also want to give a shout real quick to Benighted, one of the most beautiful tracks in the
fantastic.
discography.
Benighted is the first like true all clean singing Opeth masterpiece track.
Yeah, beautiful song.
And the acoustic
guitar work
guitar
on it is so good.
Fabulous. Yeah.
Because Credence on My Arms Your Hearse is an amazing track, but like he really masters writing a song like that, starting with Benighted.
Yeah. Yeah, what a good album.
The More,
I think it's up
The
there.
More is absolutely a masterpiece. The More is
that's
top 5
probably
Opeth song easily. In my opinion. The More, that's definitely one of the most.
I couldn't even
that's
pull
not
that
a
out of
hot
my
take.
brain right now, so I can't.
Are we restricting it to one song per album?
Well, let's not get into the list. But saying that The More is one of the very best Opeth songs is not a hot take.
Right now, anyway.
I don't know. It would be in my top 5.
It's on the table. I'd have to think about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to leave this conversation about Still Life giving any of our hundreds of thousands of devoted fans the impression that I don't like Still Life. It's a fucking great record. It's just it's not Blackwater Park. It's not Ghost Reveries.
I'm with you on that. Those albums are transcendent. Like I think they go to the next level for sure. But Still Life is on their heels, man. I mean, I think it's, for me, it's probably my 4th favorite Opeth record.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I don't even think, I don't, like, my opinion doesn't fucking matter about this. I'm just describing the relative peaks of my experiences of listening to Opeth.
Well, you're also more on the production side in music as well. You've just recently
production has
that,
become more and more important to me in terms of how I listen to music over the years.
Yeah, that might be good to explain as well, like where you're coming at from. Like, there's a philosophy underlying like production choices and stuff like that, and I have no context for that because much less than playing an instrument, like I can't even imagine producing or recording instruments. So like that frame of reference is far beyond for me.
Yeah,
so
me too.
I have like I can pick things up when I listen to it. Go, that sounds clear. That's quiet. That's
I mean,
but other than that, I can't make any judgments about it.
I am by
like
no means an expert on music production. I am at the entry level of music production, but having done a lot of recording with Kpora, I think I pay more attention to it now because I think about like, oh, what were we doing when we were tracking our shit and then mixing it? Like, what was the approach with mixing it? And so with that in mind, I can hear more of the relative differences in volume of the different tracks on any particular song. I think I pay more attention to it.
Yeah, I think that's
whereas I wouldn't have a long time ago.
But just as a listener, I've never had any sort of problems with the sound of Still Life. I never even thought of it as sounding terribly different from Blackwater Park production wise.
I think
Orchid and Morning Rise sound very different, but I think everything post Orchid and Morning Rise like has like the same general quality, but I don't have a very learned ear for it, so everything James said makes sense. Not like saying
none of Opeth's stuff is badly produced. I would never say that, but I definitely think there's just an increase in quality. I mean, by the time we get to like, I basically think Blackwater Park and onwards, even when, because Steven Wilson only did Blackwater Park, Damnation, and Deliverance, but that just set the bar for them on production in a different way, I think. Because Ghost Reveries is perfectly produced. Watershed is perfectly produced, and then all the 4 New Peth records are perfectly produced.
Yeah, I would say that. It's just
something a band would get used to over the years too. It makes sense for a band's production to improve over time.
I would probably say that the subsequent Opeth albums after Still Life are better produced, but I wouldn't be that inclined to think about it.
Well, before we depart from this record, I need James to say that Still Life is a 5 out of 5, or I'm rage quitting this podcast. Just fucking say it.
I mean, if we're being honest, I think probably every Opeth album is damn near a 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
If we're ranking, if every Opeth album can't be a 5, which I don't think I would say.
Yeah, didn't we talk about this earlier in the week?
You're saying a lot of words and sentences in response to this question that you don't have to
I'm
be
not
saying.
getting trapped here. I'm not getting fucking trapped here, boys.
You're he asked you a pretty simple request, and you're saying all of these sentences that no one wants to hear.
Yeah, just tell me yes or no, and we can move on here. I just need to know if I should be part of this podcast anymore.
Yes, dear leader. Still Life is a perfect 5 out of 5, as with all
Wonderful.
other Opeth albums.
Awesome.
High cringe, extreme cringe.
Speaking of cringe, let's talk about Dream Theater.
Speaking of cringe, let's talk about Dream Theater. That is, where is the lie in that sentence? There isn't one. We can just move on.
Dream Theater, we love you. We talked about 4 of your albums for 2.5 hours a few weeks ago, so there is no shortage of love for you boys.
I can feel it in the air.
The 3 of us.
I can feel it in the air. Can you feel it in the air?
I can feel it in my penis.
I can feel the long tangent about the astonishing in the air. It's coming.
Fucking mouth. Shut your fucking mouth. Let's just not do this.
I love that album. So.
I disavow.
Say what you want.
Jacob is always having to say things that I disavow. Formally.
Come on, boys, we're talking about Metropolis 2 here. We're talking about the best that Dream Theater probably ever did.
Other than.
We're not talking about Lord Nefarious.
Other than.
Don't do it.
Nefarious.
Attention Battalion.
Fuck, I'm leaving, man. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Jim and Jake over here have moral qualms about making fun of the astonishing that I do not share.
I dare not mock gods, Anthony.
All right, that answers my question.
This is a stupid conversation.
You just better hope they never see our Discord chats.
Well, they're never going to hear this podcast.
They're never going to listen to this.
That's probably no big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, this is going in the trash. Yeah. So.
All right, what are we actually talking about? We're talking about We're talking about Scenes from a Memory.
Metropolis.
Okay.
So, real quick, why Scenes from a Memory over Images and Words as the entry point? I think it's a songwriting thing.
Because I think Scenes from Memory came out at the very end of the 90s, and I think it is the apotheosis of the style that has its origins in Parallels by Fate's Warning. So I think that the starter pack comes full circle, and that we have the kind of like the origin story with an album like Parallels, and then we have that style of prog metal, the kind of melodic style, reaching its absolute zenith with Scenes from Memory in 99.
Yeah, and I mean,
I think that's a nice...
specifically as a Dream Theater album, too, this just covers so much more ground than the other 90s Dream Theater stuff. We get the more straight-ahead songwriting that we get glimpses of on Falling Into Infinity, but we also get, balls-out instrumental mania with Dance of Eternity. And then everywhere in between.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's nice for to give the starter pack a narrative structure. I don't want people to get the impression that I feel like people could easily just take out, if they wanted 5 albums for a starter pack for prog metal. I feel like you could take Metropolis Part 2 out and pick either Awake or Images and Words, and that'd be a fine starter pack too.
Yeah, it would be, without a doubt.
Yeah. I guess I just want to make that clear, but I definitely understand for like the narrative structure, like the way we're going through this and showing the development of the genre. If you're looking for that, then yeah, that's like obviously I think Metropolis Part 2 is the choice.
I think that's the primary purpose of the starter pack, is to like gain knowledge of the genre, not necessarily listen to the best of the genre. Although Scenes from Memory we would all say is one of the best of the genre.
Yeah.
I think so too.
This is the holographic Charizard at the end of the
Fire Spin, 120 damage. That's what Scenes from Memory is doing. That was the move on it, right? Fire Spin did 120.
I don't remember.
You clearly remember though. I'm proud of you.
I don't remember if it did 100 or 120.
I don't remember either.
It did a lot.
I think Ian has one of those. Yeah.
Really? They're pricey, man.
Yeah, I mean, Scenes from Memory here. Like, what can we say? It's fucking flawless.
Can't say anything. Episode
except for Portnoy's snare, actually, or not his snare. His snare is good. His bass drum. Yeah, it's his bass drum.
I've never noticed that as a listener.
The production.
Portnoy's bass drum is pretty brutal on this.
Portnoy sounds amazing on this album. Listening to this album really makes me realize what they lost with Portnoy.
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, I don't know. Portnoy's so charismatic. He's just so damn charismatic. He's such a forward drummer.
Train of Thought too. Portnoy is absolutely unbelievably good on Train of Thought too. But yeah, like the sort of way that the drums function on like Moving Pictures by Rush, where it's like very forward and like just incredibly just tasty. Like constantly tasty, crazy, like little changes and fills everywhere. Like what do you listen to when you listen to like Moving Pictures? Like I get the same, like sort of giddy feeling when I listen to the drums on Scenes from Memory. Portnoy is probably my favorite of the instrumentalists on this particular Dream Theater album.
Interesting.
Which I mean is splitting hairs because it is Dream Theater and it's going to have like amazing instrumental performances, like definitionally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously biased towards Big John because I can't help it being a guitarist, but they're all amazing.
Well, also speaking of what they lost with Portnoy, let's talk about what they gained with Jordan Rudess here. I mean, I like the Kevin Moore era is like wonderful. We have an episode on that, but I had my criticisms of Rudess's like choices of solos in certain places. I mean, the dude
I agree.
I'm on record. I think I'm on record somewhere saying that Rudess is the most talented member of Dream Theater. That's a hot take, maybe a big claim, but
defensible.
That dude is.
Yeah, it's defensible.
Yeah.
The dude's got chops. So not taking anything away from him, but there are just certain points in the later parts of Dream Theater's discography, and then some featured work that he does on other artists' albums and stuff. Where I'm kind of like, I don't know if I go there. No complaints at all from Rudess on this album. I think it seamlessly works. So the first moment that obviously I think grips everyone is like the overture, that part where they have that like recurring riff that you get at the beginning of like the Dance of Eternity, and then Rudess comes in and it's just like sheer elation, like the floodgates open up and
it's
beautiful.
Just
like the soundscapes start pouring in, and it's just it's such a powerful moment, completely moving. And then of course the other moment I want to mention here is on Fatal Tragedy, when I guess the Petrucci comes back and plays that solo in a way on the Dance of Eternity, but it's like right near the end of the track where Rudess has that kind of weird breakdown-esque keyboard part. But yeah, I mean his style on this record is seamless. I have no complaints from it at all.
Yeah, the ragtime piano break in Dance of Eternity is just absolutely incredible, and it shouldn't be good. Like it shouldn't be good. The idea of doing a ragtime break on that track, like, conceptually sounds like it should be a failure, but it is the opposite. It's like the extreme opposite of a failure.
Think about it. I mean, Rudess is basically the modern Keith Emerson in his compositional style and his performance style. And think about like the ragtime bit from Carnival 9. It shouldn't work, but it fits perfectly. It's just one of these weird little idiosyncratic moments from an incredibly quick-witted mind, a quick-witted musical mind who can weave something like that in where you almost barely notice it.
Yeah,
it's over so fast, but it seemed to work.
Yeah, that ragtime break in Dance of Eternity is peak music, as is Dance of Eternity in general.
Fucking 6-string sweep from Petrucci, like right out of it, leading into the next big section.
Dance of Eternity is the best like traditionally wanky prog rock song, perhaps of all time. Not that I
Jake
like the term wanky, but it is.
Talked about this once. I think we said like no woman on earth will ever understand the Dance of Eternity.
I was just about to say. My lady friend does not like when I play the Dance of Eternity.
It's terribly unfeminine.
That's true. It is left-brained. Although the ragtime break adds a feminine flair, if you will.
Perhaps.
Maybe not feminine, but at least a different flair. But yeah, just like stacking on time signature changes for 7 minutes is not
you ever seen
not traditionally feminine, at least if you advocate for such language, which I don't.
That is done by someone completely unconcerned with getting laid.
Yeah.
You ever seen the guy? You
got it exactly right.
Who did the beatboxing?
Huh?
You seen the guy who did the beatboxing cover of Dance of Eternity?
No, but I bet that's excellent.
That sounds amazing.
You gotta check it out.
Also, James, say the sentence that you said a second ago again, because it describes Dream Theater in general.
The Dance of Eternity is something done by someone who is something created by someone who is completely unconcerned with getting laid.
And then we can,
that's what this is.
By extension, we could say Dream Theater is something that is created by someone who's completely unconcerned with getting laid.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Well, and for people who listen to it as well.
Yeah. Primarily people who listen to it. That's another extension. And then by extension from what I said, the same applies to anyone who listens to it. And by further extension from that, the peak here, the tip of the pyramid, are people who listen to it and then get on line and talk about it on a podcast.
Yeah,
that's pretty bad.
Right. I was gonna say,
all right, boys. I think we're done here. So let's pack it in. And
it's not looking good for me. I checked my Spotify stats the other day, and Dream Theater is by far my most listened to artist. It's not even close.
It's not looking good.
Yeah. It's not good. I listened to their discography so many times. It's disgusting.
Prognosis.
So this is why I explain this to people. Yeah, I explain this to people. So we sit here, we can talk shit about Dream Theater here and there, and certain aspects of their discography that we find funny or egregious or something like that, and it's all in good fun. But then somebody who just doesn't appreciate the music or hasn't taken the time to listen to it says something terrible, and I want to kick the shit out of them.
I'd be pissed off.
It's like they're talking shit on my family. It's like no, only I can talk shit about them, motherfucker. Yeah, I get that really visceral feeling. So that's how I know I love.
That's exactly what I was saying earlier. Is that it's fine that we can shit on the Astonishing because it is coming from a place of love.
Yeah.
It is coming from a place of love. Yeah, absolutely.
Although maybe not quite with that album. That's the.
Can't resist it. I also wanted to, I mentioned this earlier today. Actually, I wanted to talk about the moment in Beyond This Life. So where they go into that really groovy part, and Petrucci just unleashes into this solo. There's that time signature change, and it leads out, and then they had that really weird. Rudess goes in this weird. I mean, this was before the two references that I made, but you've got the Derek Sherinian stuff on Planet X with Virgil Donati that I had a lot, that kind of weird jazzy big. I don't know how else to describe it, but then the current keyboardist for Spock's Beard,
Ryo Komodo.
Yes. Ryo, yeah, exactly. Very similar, and then next thing you know, there's this weird Zappa-esque part at the and it just goes through a span of 2 minutes, and that's one of those things that should not work, but
that's a good point. Sense. That is another one of these moments that shouldn't work but does for some reason. So when you say the Zappa part, are you talking about the part that has like it sounds like like a marimba, or are you talking about the Petrucci part?
I think it's the part sounds like a marimba. It's right after 9 minutes. It goes dun 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 dun.
Yeah, so
the
reason that sounds like Zappa.
That's crazy.
The reason that sounds like Zappa is Petrucci's got the wah turned on, but he's got the wah compressed all the way down, so it's this just fucking trebly honky sound. But he plays the whole line through that filter, and then with the marimba on top of it following the line, it's a classic kind of Zappa sound.
Sometimes I just sit down and listen to stuff and I just laugh. I'm just like, how the fuck? It's the same reaction. I'm gonna have to. I mean, I don't know. When I listen to the beginning of Close to the Edge, I tend to laugh at it. Like, it's just so fucking big and crazy. It doesn't make sense, and it's so good. I don't know what other reaction to have to it sometimes. I guess I could cry. That would work too, I guess.
The Spirit Carries On solo is often called...
go
ahead, James.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, I mean, there are tearful moments on this album. Spirit Carries On being the obvious.
Many call it the best Petrucci solo, and it's my personal favorite Petrucci solo is Lines in the Sand. But I think the Spirit Carries On solo might be number 2.
Yeah. Through Her Eyes is really is a tearjerker as well.
Great ballads on this album, and they didn't overdo it with the ballads.
Yeah.
And the placement... I don't really personally care that much about the story of this album because just personally, it's not even me shitting on it. But regardless of the plot, I think that the sequencing of the tracks is really, really smart on this album.
Well, James, you're into the transmigration thing earlier, right?
Yeah. I mean, they're basically giving you this transmigration of the soul story with reincarnation.
Yeah, and it has like the little like the film noir bit, which is cool. I like that. Like, I think the story is
free.
And on Beyond This Life as well, with like finding the note in the killer's pocket and stuff, like old detective movie vibe. No, I think this like
it does sound like an old detective movie.
I don't really. I think that's what it's going for. Isn't it like the 40s in the story, in the actual story, like it's the past part,
something like that. It's 1928. Duh.
1928, of course. Yeah, duh. That's the name of the overture. Like, I generally understand like what the story is, but I don't like know what the characters are or anything.
Yeah.
I think it's like I think it like is fun to listen to as an album, like where you are kind of like hearing these like names repeated. It's just like kind of fun and like goofy, but in a way that's fun and it doesn't take away from the music. But I don't really care that much about the story though. But
it's a dark story. Like I wouldn't pick it up from the tone of the music. Like, I don't consider this a dark album at all.
No, it's very uplifting at certain moments. Spirit Carries On.
And even like the violent moments have like kind of like an action movie quality. I wouldn't really say it's dark.
They do. Yeah, it's very, very theatrical.
Yeah, like
without going too far with it.
Murder mystery, kind of like. Yeah. Well, so the obvious one we haven't talked about is Home.
Yeah.
And I mean, fucking sitar, man. What a beautiful fucking instrument. What a beautiful use of that instrument on this track. And then Petrucci recreates the sound on the guitar at the end of that like solo right at the very end.
Oh yeah, the end of Home is
sitar's playing and it leads into that. Yeah, the sitar plays into that little like solo part, but it's crazy.
Petrucci or Labrie is a monster on Home too, man.
Labrie's great all throughout this album. Everyone's in prime form on this album. Everyone's in prime form. Some great My Young moments, even though I wish My Young was mixed higher, as I wish on every Dream Theater album. But still a lot of great My Young. Just so many great little like just nuggets in this album where like especially with Petrucci and Rudess will just like that moment in Beyond This Life you were talking about, and also like the part towards the end of Fatal Tragedy where it's like that where it breaks into like that like organ, that like church organ. They'll just like go off and do this weird little thing like that, and you discover these little Easter eggs that are like all throughout this album as you listen to it more and more.
Good God Almighty, that fucking Petrucci solo in Fatal Tragedy is just absurd. Yeah. It's so fucking good.
It's so good, and like that heavy riff that he breaks into at the very end is also. Yeah. And they get funky on this album so much, which again I love it when Dream Theater get funky, which they've utterly abandoned in their more recent years.
Like in Overture 1928, when Petrucci does the middle pickup selector thing.
Yeah, and then the break in the middle of
what I'm talking about.
Yeah. They get funky a lot, and just so much fun. They're having so much fun playing together on this album. Like at no point is it rote. Like it's musicians that are like obviously just like having a blast playing together.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and that's what I love about Dream Theater in general. I mean, these guys are virtuosos, and there's always a fun element to it. It's not academic classical performance.
Yeah, there's a lot of like. To me, it seems like sometimes Petrucci or Porter, whoever is sitting in there and just like, let's fucking try this, and then they fucking kill it. Yeah, it's crazy.
The break in the middle of Stern's Deja Vu, like the volta in the middle of the song, is also super, super funky. One of my favorite moments in Dream Theater, actually.
Yeah. This is an absolute 10 out of 10 album for me. Probably, I think I did rank it in the top 5. I think I had it at like 3 or 4 or something like that. Yeah. I don't know what to say about it.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, this is just one of those records like that I've heard so many times.
Yeah.
Just so many times over the years.
I mean, like, even if you like think Dream Theater is cringe, which they kind of are, in some ways, you really can't deny Scenes from a Memory. Like, you can't deny it. Like, I think it's like,
well,
it would be hard to listen to it and just like think it's terrible.
Yeah, I'm not interested in only in things that are very, very hip. Like coolness is good in a certain context, but not everything has to be so fucking cool.
No, it doesn't.
What do you mean? This album's cool as fuck.
It's
probably the coolest of Dream Theater albums.
It might be the coolest of Dream Theater albums, but it's not a cool album.
No, it's cool. It's
I mean,
really cool.
Cool
I used to play this at parties all the time. What do you mean?
The parties with you.
Have you heard the Dance
with
of
you and your
Eternity?
anime pillows.
Yeah.
You mean the tea party,
exactly.
the 11:30 p.m. on a Friday night tea
You
party.
got it exactly
with your wavy
right.
pillows?
You weren't supposed to tell me what about that, but yes.
He's laughing because it's true.
Uh-huh.
But no, I mean, yeah, Dream Theater is not a cool band, and I don't give a fuck. There's lots.
I wasn't
of shit
saying I
love
gave
that's
a fuck.
There's lots of shit. No, I'm not saying you are either. I'm saying there are a lot of people that like that's that. I think that's probably the thing that people don't like about Dream Theater. People who don't like Dream Theater are either put off by the instrumental mania, or just the fact that it's nerdy shit. It's very fucking uncool.
I do want to amend when it comes to the astonishing
self-awareness and they have no soul.
Maybe. I don't care that it's I don't care that it's uncool. I care for other reasons.
But it's so uncool.
Yeah.
It's terribly uncool.
Oh, it's so bad.
All of their shit is terribly uncool.
But the astonishing is so uncool. Like
Bros,
oh my god.
I can't do it, bros. I just can't do it, lads.
James and I have shit on the astonishing in every music podcast episode we've done, and I'm pretty sure before we were shitting on it and we weren't talking about music.
Have we shit on the astonishing in every episode that we've recorded, no matter what the topic is?
I hope not.
Seamless transition. Opeth style seamless transition here in the podcast.
Into the outro.
Well, so we got 2 orders of business here, right? So we should do our rankings of these albums, I guess, for people who like that sort of thing. Sure. So whoever wants to start, 5 to 1.
Worst to best, James. Worst to best. Official list.
This is official. This is divined from God. Parallels. Focus. Ocean Machine. Still Life. Metropolis.
Cool.
Worst to best.
Kind of
I'm sorry to say
it's
it,
worst to best,
and it's not like me. It's worst to best. That's what I said. Is that not what I said?
No, I know. It's just a weird way to put it because worst is a strong word.
You went over this last time too. Like, anyone who takes this literally is dense. Obviously, we're not like actually trying to make like objective claims about the quality of the albums.
I mean, there's gonna be a worst Olympian, but
this
like, I mean, everyone.
Okay, worst to best.
So whatever.
My least favorite of these 5 would be Biomech, followed by Parallels, followed by Focus, and then it's like Still Life and Scenes from Memory are pretty neck and neck, but I would put Scenes from Memory as number 1.
Nice. Yeah, for me, Parallels at 5, Biomech, Still Life, Focus, and then Saint Anger would be my number.
That's all, folks.
That was actually good. You did the bit. And you nailed it.
I did the bit.
Hats off, big guy.
The whole thing, yeah. Yeah, thank you.
That was the first successful
so
bit so far on the program.
The program.
It all led to this. Like I said, they finished music, so I had to.
Yeah, it's like saying amen at the end of a prayer.
Plug.
You must invoke Saint Anger.
Saint Anger, right? Yeah, let's all plug an extra album for people. Oh, we didn't talk about Chaos Sphere at all. Which is
we said in the beginning. I mean, Chaos Sphere was like an asterisk album for this list because.
Fair enough. Well, I will say just as a thing, go listen to Chaos Sphere if you're trying to get into prog metal. You have to. I mean, you gotta listen to it if you're into that kind of music.
It's
just
the asterisk for this list.
Love me some Meshuggah.
Yeah, fair.
That is just the heaviest goddamn album ever made.
Except for Kalas by Meshuggah, which is actually the heaviest goddamn album.
Except for maybe another Meshuggah album.
I do think Kalas is the heaviest of them, personally.
Kalas is extremely
The
heavy.
Demon's Name is Surveillance is the heaviest song I think ever recorded.
Oh my god.
The violence?
Oh my god, the double bass is an onslaught.
Swarms?
Oh, Swarm is also very...
You guys listen to Swarms, right?
Swarm is also among one of the heaviest things ever created, but The Demon's Name is Surveillance is a... I don't know.
I, the great Leviathan, insatiable Colossus is the first line of the album. I mean, that's pretty fucking heavy.
Kalas is so good.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Meshuggah, man.
Yeah, it's really good.
All right, so what else?
We were going to do honorable mentions like we did for the last starter pack.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, Into the Everflow, Psychotic Waltz.
I thought it'd be Psychotic Waltz,
Yeah.
Good choice. Love Psychotic Waltz. Jake, what you got there, bud?
I think I'm going to do Soul Niger within Frederick Thorndahl's Special Defects. Meshuggah adjacent, I think is much more clearly progressive metal.
Yeah, well, you've got
I do agree.
Mats going ham on the keyboards. And
Mats Oberg and
Morgan Ogren.
And Thomas Hakes doing some of the vocals and
that
stuff.
That is such a cool album. I love
that album is
Soul,
nuts.
Whatever.
So good.
It's my most listened to song from last year, and it's 40 minutes long. Well, if you get those 2 extra tracks,
that is a sick album.
It's crazy.
My honorable mention, probably Symbolic by Death, but that might be questionable.
Extremely important.
If you can mention that, then I should have been able to mention Neurosis.
I think
Silver and
Symbolic
Blood
would pass as a prog metal album, but I mean, like I think about Crystal Mountain. There's no universe where that's not a prog metal song.
It is. It definitely is.
Yeah.
Symbolic is like one of the best albums ever in any genre. So.
Yeah, it's one of.
But a starter pack is not a best
of.
It's
my top 15. Yeah, I think I have that in my top 15.
Starter pack is not the same as a best of.
That's right. Yeah. So going forward, that will be the modus operandi for these starter packs.
Wait, what was your honorable mention, Jacob? Did you say it? Oh, Soul Niger with it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we talked about it for 30 seconds. You were there.
Yeah, now I remember.
Yeah, what happened? I see.
I had to be reminded of it, as is a pretty universal thing in human conversation. We're not all galaxy brains like Jimbo over here, obviously.
Can't help it, boys. Can't help my endowment.
Yeah. And yet you're still less than, you still would place yourself in servitude to John Petrucci.
I mean, I probably would. I would
works.
place myself at his feet. It would be very voluntary servitude.
Ugh.
What a Chad.
All right, fellas. Let's wrap this one up. We'll move on to the next episode sometime here in the future. So thank you again to all of our devoted fans.
We couldn't do this without our fans.
Sometime soon. Yeah, we actually, I don't think we could do it with fans.
Yeah, I think if we had fans, we would have to stop doing
it.
it.
Be like,
that's
what
prophetic.
What the fuck are you idiots doing? Shut up. Yeah. That's what the fans would say.
Well, that's
good.
They
wouldn't be fans.
Then they wouldn't be fans, which is what everyone would say. So, by extension, we're never going to have fans.
Yeah.
We can deduce from the axiom stated that we're never going to have fans.
Never going to have fans. That seems like the right way to close this one out.
In life.
Haters are fine, though.